Any attack in 2024 in January before the Goma battle?
It was constant attack. I told you that for the past 20 days, the past 7 years, since 2018, we have more than 20 attacks.
What was the attack in 2024?
What kind of attack do you want me to give you, madam?
Because you keep saying we're under attack and by the FDLR, so...
Madam, we had 16 deaths. People were killed in January. 200 homes, including schools, including hospitals, by the FRDC from the Goma airport. Doesn't sound serious enough?
And while this cycle of conflict goes on, driven by all sorts of motivations and competing interests, it is, unsurprisingly, civilians who are bearing the biggest cost. Thousands of people have been killed in the recent fighting, and hundreds of thousands have been displaced. Almost 1 million people were already living in camps around Goma. They'd fled there to escape other rounds of fighting over the years. But some of those camps have been attacked and destroyed, and the M23 have also ordered thousands of people to leave these camps. For decades, the conflict in eastern DRC has also been characterized by some of the worst atrocities imaginable. UNICEF says children are also being targeted with rape, and at levels surpassing anything they've seen in recent years. The UN has accused the M23 of executing children.
I honestly don't think we've heard the extent of the humanitarian crisis unfolding.
Sexual and gender-based violence directed at children, at women.
At the end of the day, it's 30 years of suffering for millions of Congolese people who do not have anything to do with the interests of one or another and who only want to live in a peaceful country.
Happy Friday, y'all. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Glad to be here with you. My name is Gaetan, and today we're going to dive into the latest development, shaping the Congo, peace, profit, justice, humanitarian crisis, all of that. We're going to talk about that. So in the past few weeks, there were a few, I would say, major headlines that demand our attention that I also am going to talk about. We had a few weeks ago, or actually June 2027, so a couple months ago, actually, the DRC and Rwanda signed a deal, a peace accord facilitated by the United States. Donald J. Trump has been facilitating peace accord left and right. And the DRC was one of the countries where there was a conflict that the Trump administration thought that they will or they must jump in and provide peace. So it was reported that that peace deal also included, and I think in this show, I broke down line per line, article per article, the contents of that peace deal, the contents of what they called or what they are selling us as a peace deal, which in reality, by reading it and just reading it, not even dissecting, not even analyzing it, but just reading it, it is a deal that is going to revamp essentially mineral supply chain, mainly for the United States. As we know, the US is really fighting really hard to get its independence from China, who owns most of the critical minerals companies in the Congo. So the US then facilitated that, and there has been some concern regarding that, not just that it is actually a peace, like it's not a peace deal, it's actually like an economic deal, but also the fact that there was little to no communication regarding it, like the lack of transparency. On the Congolese side, on one hand, we have a Congolese government that has denied repeatedly that the peace deal signed actually includes some mineral components. And on the other end is also for the American people, right? Like to know that there are a few things that are mentioned in that deal that the American public must know. Because if I have to really take a step back and kind of like explain what happened, actually, we're going to dive into that. So that was on one hand. So the peace deal that was signed a couple months ago, the lack of transparency. So we're going to unpack that. The second point, or the second headlines, that actually came out like today. Actually, it's Glencore, which is a company based in Switzerland, if I'm not mistaken, is in talks to sell its stake in Kamoto Copper Company, which is one of Congo's largest cobalt and copper mine. So the potential buyers, that includes major global players. So what does this mean for the Congolese sovereignty community living near these mines? We are going to discuss that. There was also one point, and that's why I started with the video, regarding the M23 or Rwanda-backed M23. The armed groups presented last week or early this week, I believe, over 7,000 fighters. They're saying that they're ready to take over, overthrow the government in Kinshasa, the capital of the Congo, so President Tshisekedi's regime. And others also argue, because that was documented and proven multiple times, that that the Rwandan government has this habit of enrolling by force kids, children, and also citizens, regular citizen, mostly men, into the army. Like, they will go to refugee camp and enroll those people by force. They will go to school and also enroll people by force. And we're also gonna go back with this article that came out that talks about that in depth, right? It talks about the accord, the peace accord. That talks about enrolling people by force. That came out this morning, actually, in the Nation magazine. So we're going to talk about that. And finally, the fact that the U.S. Treasurer has announced new sanctions targeting groups. I was in a few weeks, targeting groups and companies involved in the illegal mineral trade linked to armed violence. So we're going to be talking about all of this. But for today specifically, I really want us to Faris Maher from Gaza. Thanks for chatting with us. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate the support. So what I wanted this show to focus is really how international law seems to be designed by some, right? And while others get to be shielded, that they get to be exempt from following international law. And something that I also really want to highlight is the report by the UN that just came out, not about the Congo specifically, but still a good news for those who have been following international news, those who have been following the development of human rights in the Congo. It's the fact that the United Nations published a report essentially saying that it was an independent commission by the UN Human Rights Council that established, and for them, they concluded there was a genocide happening in Gaza. Well, why is this very important for the Congo? It's because of the dynamic, the role that the U.S. is playing in regard and perspective to Rwanda. It is the same role that the U.S. plays in regards to Israel. So if the United States takes its leadership, on the global stage, and if the United Nations is taking its leadership on the global stage, and they can implement human rights or international laws, right? They can sanction those who commit war crimes and crimes against humanity and genocide. For the case of Israel, I guarantee you that nothing then at that point will stop them to do the exact same thing when it comes to Rwanda. So it's very interesting. It's very important for us to follow what's happening in the US, what's happening on the global stage regarding Israel, what's happening on the global stage regarding Gaza, because that is the most televised, the most um, out there news when it comes to the war, right? Like you have never seen a war happening on your screen like that live, right? It's like we know things before they happen, and all those mainstream media have been covering for the past 2 years, ever since Hamas committed the attack on Israeli civilians and the military infrastructure as well. So ever since October 7th, we have seen constant pouring out of Gaza, coming from Gaza violence, targeting civilians. So you have all these mainstream media showing those lines, showing those videos, covering that war. And then 2 years later, we seem to be getting to the conclusion, it seems to be consensus, not really consensus, but the overwhelming majority now agrees that what's going on over there is not right. It's not okay, and something needs to be done so that we stop it, whatever that is. But we're talking about an issue again that the mainstream media covers. So when it comes to the Congo, right, because of multiple reasons, and poverty is one of them. I remember doing a interview with Cocktail and Capitalism, and during that interview, I was actually pointing out the fact that people in the Congo don't necessarily have cell phones or smartphones to document consistently on a regular basis what's happening to them, right? Because not everyone has a cell phone. Not everyone can afford a smartphone. You just look at how the cost of a smartphone right now, and there's talks of iPhone 17 actually coming out today, I believe. And people don't have iPhones, and even most people don't have iPhones. I need to rephrase that. But even beyond that talk, beyond that idea that people cannot afford that, there's also the reality that the internet coverage is not the same. So not everyone has access to the internet. Like the Wi-Fi is like why the internet in the US or other parts of the world seems to be a human right. It's somebody like that's a must have, right? Like you must have internet, you must have Wi-Fi connections. There are more pressing issues. In Congo, they're not there yet, right? Like the internet coverage is super poor, especially when you go into those areas. So when it's reported, when you see clips or photos out of Gomas, when you see photos or videos out of Bukavu, Bunaganas, and these regions right now that are under Rwandan occupation, because I really want to be clear with the terminology, occupation, because the Congo today is occupied by Rwandan-backed militia, Rwanda Defense Force, because the resolution 2773 is clear about the fact that Rwanda has been present in the Congo, and Human Rights Watch says that they are illegally occupying the Congo. So when we have images coming out of those places of Congolese talking about themselves, it's not at the same rate or the same frequency than the images that you've seen from Gaza, for example. So that is something, the fact that the Congo is one of the most deadliest wars since World War II. That, talking about 5.4 million people died as a result of that war. That over 7 million people displaced as a result of that war. The result of, if you just focus on the past 2 years with the war that Rwanda has imposed on the Congolese people via its militia, via its proxy group M23, that 7 million people were displaced. That's insane, right? So it is not just insane, but it's the fact that that tragedy is undercovered It's not it's not being talked about as it should be. And there are many reasons, and I already mentioned the tech aspect to that, but also the fact that I think that's also one of the reasons, one of the causes that Congo is a French-speaking country. So most mainstream media are obviously Anglo-Saxon, like it's English, they speak English. Think about the Guardian, CNN, Financial Times, the New York Times, and all these outlets, all these medias are Anglo-Saxon media. So there is already that disconnect with the language when you have in a country where people speak French, they speak Lingala, they speak Swahili, they speak Chiluba, they speak whatever language that is spoken there. 4 national languages, 200 dialects, except English. English is not the national language spoken in the country. It's not the official language spoken in the country. So you already have that disconnect there about reporting the information, making sure that, okay, we have folks who can speak the language, that can speak directly to those who are impacted. We don't have that. And the Congo has been playing catch up, and I really need to give credit to Congolese people like myself. The Congolese people has been playing catch up. I remember, for example, because Friends of the Congo was established in 2004. You can think about how many organizations out there today were present in 2004, were present in 2010, were present in 2012, were present even before Friends of the Congo in 1998 to speak about what's happening, what was happening at that time when the Congo was invaded twice, 1996, 1998. We talked about the Genocide a few months ago. We honored the Genocide for Economic Gain, August 2nd, 1998. That's the date that Congolese folks chose to symbolize the fact that we had a foreign country that came in the Congo, invaded the Congo for its natural resources, and that has been the case for the past 30 years. How many organizations were present in the Congo in 2006, for example, in 2009, when the CNDP, which was another Rwanda-backed militia, was causing havoc, chaos in the Congo. How many were there at that time? How many were there in 2012, in 2012, when the US decided to withdraw funding to Rwanda because it was proven, just like it is right now, that Rwanda was destabilizing the Democratic Republic of the Congo? How many organizations were there then? So you can see that the Congo has come from so far, and right now you can see on social media, because of folks like you, because of regular, ordinary people like you and I, being on social media, using our social media platform to amplify the voices of the Congolese, and it's particularly I want to comment Congolese folks that are organizing, living today in Europe, living today in Canada, living today in the United States, that are leveraging the knowledge, they are leveraging the language they speak, whether it is in English, it is in Dutch, in even French, right? Leveraging that. And I've also a video once of someone speaking Mandarin, talking about what was going on in the Congo. It's amazing. So we have come from so far, and there is a struggle that needs to be acknowledged. There is the disconnect that needs to be acknowledged that makes Congo being underreported today. But we also need to commend the effort that has been made thus far, not just for Friends of the Congo, but again, with also the partners and other organizations. The Congolese Action Youth Platform, salute to you guys, coming from far, from 2013 in London, 2010, 2011, 2013 in London, all the way to today, the way that the organization groups of people have been playing catch up. And the results can be seen on multiple levels. So it is important to mention that. So back to the first point of the headlines. We've seen the peace accord that I mentioned signed between the Congo and Rwanda, facilitated by the United States, right? A very, very important accord that, according to many who I would say are really, really, really naive, excuse me to use the term, global, naive, and also, frankly, unfamiliar with the situation in the Congo, thought that this particular accord was going to bring peace to the Congo. And I really hope that we were wrong. I really hope that when they were signing this, that I was wrong, that it was going to bring peace, that this particular peace agreement put forward by the Trump administration, by the United States, was going to finally end the war in the Congo. I wish that that was the case, but it's not. Because, like I said, I'm not going to go back into, again, the content of it. So if you haven't, please go ahead and read, or you can go to YouTube, Congo Friends on YouTube, and the live section. We have bunch of videos there, and a particular episode that I dedicated on the content of this. So go back if you have time, just go back and listen to that, watch it, because you will see that everything was mentioned except, which is really ironic, the accountability part, the peace part. Because for peace to happen, peace needs to be imposed. Because Congo is a failed state. We have incapable leaders, deficient governments, failing governments, non-functioning government that is unable to provide whatever you can imagine that needs to be provided for people to be happy, for people to be successful, and people, frankly, to just live, right? The Congolese government is failing in that regard. They're failing. So because they're failing, you can imagine, because we also talk about that, how the Congolese government used, I would say, mercenaries for them to be able to provide security and safety to the citizen, and that is itself illegal under international law. Like, you cannot use mercenaries for that specific reason. And there was a report, or I will say like a video that was shared by NBC News a few weeks ago, showing really the extent of the involvement of Rwanda. So when you see that, when you watch that, I think I'm gonna put this up there for y'all to watch as well. When you see that, and then you realize that, wait, the Rwanda government is really implicated, yet there is no mention of Rwanda Defense Force withdrawing its troops from the DRC, then there is a problem with making sure that peace happens, because the aggressor is not held accountable. So let me see if we can play this one. Okay.
Like the soldier, quickly! Don't joke. Move, quickly, like the soldier.
This footage from earlier this year shows a stunning military upset in the Democratic Republic of Congo. These men are well-trained foreign military contractors hired by the Congolese government. Surrounded by news cameras, they're being rounded up and kicked out of the country by the rebel group known as M23, seen here in uniform. M23 claims to be a grassroots rebellion fighting the government to secure the rights of Eastern Congo's Tutsi ethnic minority. In early 2025, they shocked the world by capturing Eastern Congo's largest cities. But once the cameras stopped rolling, the real power backing M23's surprise advance marched in to occupy the area. These are troops from the tiny neighboring country of Rwanda, identified by intelligence sources who spoke with NBC News. We uncovered evidence showing that Rwanda has armed, trained, and commanded the M23 movement and committed thousands of its own troops to the fight. Their clandestine war has given them control over a territory with some of the world's richest deposits of rare earth minerals used in cell phones, computer chips, and batteries. It's also killed thousands and displaced millions. Despite accusations from the UN and Western governments, Rwandan President Paul Kagame has carefully and repeatedly denied any role in the conflict.
This problem was not created by Rwanda and is not Rwanda's problem. It is Congo's problem. M23 are not Rwandans.
Does Rwanda currently have any troops at all in Eastern DRC?
I don't know.
NBC News exclusively obtained 3 years of confidential intelligence reports and surveillance footage. They were given to us by military contractors hired to provide intelligence for Congolese forces. Using additional incident reports from the Rwanda Defense Forces, or RDF, satellite imagery, and interviews with combatants, we were able to piece together an account of Rwanda's secret war. For the first time, we can see how Rwanda established field bases on Congolese soil, like this base, nearly 40 miles across the border, which was used to arm, train, and command M23 allies. The leaked footage also shows how the RDF flooded eastern Congo with heavy weaponry, including guided mortars, heavy machine guns, missile launchers, and even armored air defense systems. They established a network of trenches and fortified positions for Rwandan soldiers to directly engage in the fighting. The contractors we spoke to estimated that Rwanda's deployment in eastern Congo has grown to more than 5,000 troops. A spokesperson for the Rwandan government declined to respond to our questions, but said Rwanda acts in defense of its borders and has no territorial ambitions in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Along the way, there have been cracks in Rwanda's covert war. In May 2022, Congolese forces claimed to have captured 2 Rwandan soldiers on Congolese soil. Rwanda denied this, claiming the soldiers were kidnapped across the border. But NBC obtained the Rwanda Defense Force's internal report on the incident, confirming these soldiers were captured while taking part in an M23 attack on a Congolese military barracks. The report recommends punishment for their commander, who allowed his soldiers to participate in the attack while wearing Rwandan military patches. To preserve secrecy, Rwanda began to equip M23 and their own troops with the same unidentifiable uniforms and gear, making it nearly impossible to tell them apart. To prevent the capture and identification of Rwandan weapon systems, they shuttled them back and forth across the border to Rwanda every night. The RDF removed the bodies of dead Rwandan soldiers from the battlefield, and when they couldn't, they stripped them of ID and insignia. Despite these measures, the mounting death toll is becoming increasingly difficult to hide. Using satellite imagery, we counted one by one the grave sites in this Rwandan military cemetery. Since 2021, the cemetery has grown by more than 900 graves. The largest increase occurred between late 2023 and early 2024. During this period, the Congolese military conducted a wave of drone attacks within their own borders. There were so many Rwandan casualties, they nearly lost the war. This strike from January 2024 took out an RDF base and ammunitions depot near the Congolese village of Kiwanja. The attack killed Rwandan officers who were training M23 recruits. A spokesperson for the government declined to answer our questions about Rwandan casualties, but said our reporting on their military cemetery has, quote, no basis in reality. NBC News spoke with a former member of the Rwandan military who lost friends, mentors, and family members in the conflict. Their funerals, he told us, were strictly monitored and controlled. Fearing retaliation from the government, he spoke to NBC on the condition of anonymity. He provided us with documents and corroborating sources to verify his account. To ensure his anonymity, we're reading from a transcript of his interview.
I have a family member. He's my cousin. He called me. He said the enemy is very dangerous here. He said we are very afraid. And he was shaking. You know, the voice was shaking. He died on December 31st, 2024. They bring you to the cemetery, they show you the coffin, then they bury, then you go home. After that, they follow up with the families, their conversations, if they're sharing what happened to them. They're supposed to stay silent.
For many Rwandans, grief is more powerful than fear. NBC News found and verified 91 examples of Rwandan families who defied authorities by posting funeral notices of relatives who died in eastern Congo.
When someone is dead, sometimes you have nothing left to fear. They have nothing to lose.
Nearly 4 years of conflict have taken their greatest toll. Position, then kicked out the entire nearby village to maintain secrecy. Over the course of the war, many of the displaced found shelter in refugee camps around Goma, the region's largest city. But Goma is now occupied by M23 and Rwandan forces, and many are being displaced yet again. Satellite images show thousands of tents and temporary structures in one of these camps being completely dismantled. Western governments have known about Rwanda's involvement and have said so publicly. But still, Rwanda continues to receive international aid, and that includes military funding for its UN peacekeeping missions. Now Rwanda is at the table for US-brokered peace talks, despite never having officially admitted to taking part in the conflict.
It will also allow millions of displaced people to return to their homes, to safer communities, with new economic opportunities.
The US is promising speedy investment into eastern Congo's supplies of rare earth minerals. It's an attractive offer for President Kagame. Under the proposed deal, Rwanda would profit from this mineral investment and exit the conflict without accountability for its secret war.
So that's what has been happening. Evidence of Rwanda's presence in the Congo. And something that, you know, as we are discussing, if you folks are involved with what's going on in Gaza, obviously that's really televised. People talk about that and only that. But I personally ask myself a question, right? Like they even say that in this video, that despite all of the evidence, Rwanda continues to receive support. Rwanda continues to receive support, financial support from the West, from France, from the UK, from the United States. And that's despite, even in total contradiction with American laws regarding that. So There is one law in particular that I would like to share with you guys, and we keep talking about that. It is the Public Law 109-546 of December 22nd, 2006. It is called the Democratic Republic of the Congo Relief, Security, and Democracy Promotion Act of 2006. And that was during George W. Bush. He was a Republican. And he's a Republican still. And the section that I would like us to focus is the section 105. And Friends of the Congo has a whole documentary, made a whole documentary regarding this particularly. And if you haven't watched that, go to YouTube. It's called Congo Crisis Uncovering the Truth. It's on YouTube. Congo friends, check it out. And the section 105 is really clear. It says that the U.S. Secretary of State, right, section 105 authorizes the Secretary to withhold assistance under the Foreign Assistance Act of 1961, other than humanitarian, peacekeeping, and counterterrorism assistance for a foreign country determined by the Secretary to be acting to destabilize the Congo. That's what this law is telling us, literally. And Secretary Marco Rubio is the current U.S. Secretary of State. Before him was Anthony Blinken. They had, Secretary Rubio has the authority, the power right now, if he really wants to, if the U.S. foreign policy regarding the Congo wants to end the war, stop the war, allow the civilians to come back to their homes, not come back like it's been the case in a few months or a few weeks, come back to a home occupied by other people, come back and seeing that the lands now belong to somebody else. And when they show evidence that I am the owner of this land, I own this house, here is the documents that prove that. Well, that's the M23 government, the Rwanda's backed M23 government does. It burns, simply. It just confiscate those documents and burn them. That also has been documented. So Section 105 is clear, and yet the US doesn't do that. So that's the first law that I wanted to share with you guys. Another law that also can explain, because the question is that why the US doesn't do that, right? There was, let me see if I can find it. There was also another, let me see if I can find it. It wasn't really private conversation. Let me see if I can pull it out. It was Brother Kambale Savuli who shared that with me. Let me see if I have it somewhere. I will find it. But another law that I'll get back to that maybe when I show the next video. I have time to check it out. But what I also wanted to share with you is this very interesting law, right? It's commonly called the Hague Invasion Law. The Hague Invasion Act. And the Hague is essentially the city where the ICC is. right? Like when there was a war criminal that is being arrested, is being sent to the Hague in Netherlands. And that is essentially a law that was passed under President George Bush, or was George Bush? And it was a law that was intended to prevent the U.S. cooperation with the International Criminal Court. Where is it? Give me a second. There is actually a proper term for that, is the U.S. American Service Member Protection Act. So I'm trying to get to the actual documents and not just what third parties wrote about that. But there was a really good whole report on that by Human Rights Watch. So let me see. So there you go, I found it. And that one is also very interesting. It's the American Service Members Protection Act. We're gonna read it together. Let's see. I want to make sure that y'all read that with me. So, American Service Members Protection Act of 2001 prohibits U.S. cooperation with International Criminal Court. Specifies restriction on 1, participation by covered U.S. persons in the United Nations, UN peacekeeping and peace enforcement operation. 2, transfer to the court of U.S. classified national security and law enforcement information. And 3, the provision of U.S. military assistance with specified exception to the government of a country that is a party to the court. Prescribe conditions for a presidential waiver of the prohibitions of the requirements of this act. Well, really, something very interesting to know about this, right, is that we are in 2001. And if people remember what was happening in 2001, I was super, super young, but I was still, I was able to document myself. That's the time that the U.S. decided to, 2001, 2002, during that period, that's the time that the U.S. decided to invade Afghanistan. So we had the 9/11 attack that happened during that year. So it's following as a response to that. I was in November 1st. So it was a few months after 9/11 that the U.S. wanted to go after those who committed that terrorist attack. The World Trade Center's towers were literally brought down by 2 airplanes, carrying also civilians. And they decided to invade countries. And one of the countries invaded, I mentioned Afghanistan, but the most talked about was Iraq, the Iraq War in 2002. So people again were arguing, or still arguing, and now that we know that the pretext that was put forward to invade Iraq was not true, that there was no nuclear weapons, but the U.S. still went in, and internally the U.S. was able to obviously court-martial a few military members who were committed crimes, but other outlets or other organizations like the Human Rights use war crimes that was committed by U.S. members. So the United States was afraid at that time that their members, the civilians, were going to be not just members, not just civilians, but also the whole government, right, could potentially face consequences at the International Criminal Court, which not just people. So then they came up with this. But there was a really particular provision, and that's in regard to ally as well. It's not on here, but there was an amendment to this that extended. Oh, there you go. Declares that the requirements of these acts, okay, shall not prohibit any action authorized by the president to bring about the release from captivity of any U.S. military personnel, covered U.S. person, and certain other persons, covered allied person, who are being detained or imprisoned, I'm going to highlight this, against the will by or on behalf of the court. I'm going to stop there. Covered allied persons. So I'm like, what does that even mean, right? And keep in mind, we're in 2002. It simply means that the United States, essentially, the United States of America, can and will use military force in Netherlands, an European country, to release personnel that is of a U.S. citizenship, always a citizen of a country that is allied to the United States. It's mind-blowing. And that's why this service member, American Service Members Protection Act, was renamed or got a nickname of Hague Invasion Act. So how does this relate to Rwanda? And I'm going to tell you that in a bit. Rwanda and the United States, let me see if I can find it, signed, it was in what year? There you go. It was in 2003, guys. Treaties and other international acts series. International Criminal Courts, Article 98. Agreements between the United States of America and Rwanda, signed at Washington, March 4th, 2003. 2003. The American Service Members Protection Act of 2001 was introduced in 2001, November 1st, 2001. 2 years later, they expanded and essentially signed an agreement with Rwanda. What does this agreement say? What does this agreement say? Section 203, Section 2003. Waiver and termination of prohibition of this title. It's all, again, reinforce that. Let me see. Am I showing the right one? So, okay. The agreement between the government of the United States of America and the government of the Republic of Rwanda regarding the surrender of persons to international tribunals. Reaffirming that the importance of bringing to justice those who commit genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes, considering that the parties have each expressed their intention were appropriate to investigate and prosecute war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide alleged to have been committed by the respective officials, employees, military personnel, or nationals, hereby agree as follows. For purpose of this agreement, person, that's the definition, person one party present in the territory of the other shall not absent to express consent of the first party be surrendered or transferred by any means to any international tribunal for any purpose, unless otherwise obligated to do so by international agreements to which both the United States and Rwanda are parties. The United States never ratified the statute that allowed them or forced them to cooperate with the ICC right away. And so in Rwanda, same thing for Rwanda. And B, be surrendered or transferred by any means to any other entity or third country or expelled to a third country for the purpose of surrendered to a transfer to or transfer to any international tribunal unless otherwise obligated to do so by international agreement to which both parties in Rwanda are parties. When the United States extradites, surrenders, or otherwise transfer a person of Rwanda to a third country, the United States will not agree to the surrender or transfer of that person by the third country to any international tribunal unless otherwise obligated to do so by international agreement to which both the United States and Rwanda are parties absent to express consent of the government of the Republic of Rwanda. I don't know if you guys understand what this is saying. It's essentially saying that these countries agree not to send members of their countries to the Hague. So when you have evidence like that, and that's besides the argument, right, that we need justice. But when you have evidence that points to the responsibility of Rwanda and what's going on in the Congo, and then you do not see things being done, it's because they just want things to remain that way. There is this video. I really need to show this video. It was actually a conversation on a space between me and a few folks on the panel, and Brother Kambale took the mic, and he shared with us on records what he thought needed to be shared. Give me a second. I think it's probably better if I just go to Instagram. I'm gonna play this video while I'm working to show you guys that. I'll be right back.
Any attack in 2024 on January before the Goma battle?
It was constant attack. I told you that for the past 20 days, the past 7 years, since 2018, we have more than 20 attacks.
What was the attack in 2024?
What kind of attack do you want me to give you, madam?
Because you keep saying we're under attack and by the FDLR, so...
Madam, we had 16 deaths. People were killed in January. 200 homes, including schools, including hospitals, by the FRDC from the Goma airport. Doesn't sound serious enough?
And while this cycle of conflict goes on, driven by all sorts of motivations and competing interests, it is, unsurprisingly, civilians who are bearing the biggest cost. Thousands of people have been killed in the recent fighting, and hundreds of thousands have been displaced. Almost 1 million people were already living in camps around Goma. They'd fled there to escape other rounds of fighting over the years. But some of those camps have been attacked and destroyed, and the M23 have also ordered thousands of people to leave these camps. For decades, the conflict in eastern DRC has also been characterized by some of the worst atrocities imaginable. UNICEF says children are also being targeted with rape, and at levels surpassing anything they've seen in recent years. The UN has accused the M23 of executing children.
I honestly don't think we've heard the extent of the humanitarian crisis unfolding.
Sexual and gender-based violence directed at children, at women.
At the end of the day, it's 30 years of suffering for millions of Congolese people who do not have anything to do with the interests of one or another and who only want to live in a peaceful country.
But do you have cell phones? You have cell phones here? No? You're holding a piece of Israel right there. You know where that was made?
coltan and the cobalt, which is necessary for the manufacture of mobile phones, and other minerals as well, comes out of the Congo. Theoretically, some of it comes from Rwanda. In reality, it doesn't. It comes from child labour in the Congo, is exported via Rwanda, then bought by Glencore and all these wonderfully clean mining companies that put it onto the world market.
Thanks for being patient with me. So I'm going to play this. And the context is that this was a conversation happening that was hosted by Friends of the Congo on X, formerly called Twitter. And we had few people on the panel. We had Claude Gatibouke, is an activist from Rwanda, genocide survivor and author of a book as well. And there was also Anne Garrison. Salute Anne Garrison. She's a journalist. And she's been writing a lot about Africa, Horn of Africa, Ethiopia, Tigray region, and also the Congo. There is Papa Pukas. He's an online activist and has been writing, denouncing what's going on in Congo. There was also Maman Benedict Njoko. She's an activist, human rights activist, and professor in Switzerland, I believe, in Europe. And there was myself, obviously, and also Kambale Musavuli. So I want you all to listen to this conversation because I was trying to understand. So we have all this evidence regarding Rwandan invasion. Why nothing is being done by the US to stop it? Listen to the answer.
I will quote Melan Verveer in a so-called off-the-record meeting we had, which is going to be on the record on this space. In a meeting that we had with Melan Verveer around that time, with students from St. Michael's, I asked her directly in the group that was meeting with him, will the United States withhold aid to Rwanda, given the evidence that exists, and enforce Public Law 109456? She looked at me straight in the eye and she said, the United States will never withhold aid to Rwanda. No, she was speaking as a State Department official, right? I think she was a global ambassador for what they called SGBV, namely sexual and gender-based violence. Why am I quoting her? I'm quoting her because the United States will never sanction Rwanda or any of its allies because it's its interest. The reason why the United States government withheld aid to Rwanda is not because the United States government wanted to withhold aid. It was due to pressure, grassroots pressure, that exposed the contradiction of the United States government's policy, that it became embarrassing for the United States to continue to stay the course. That same type of organizing is not taking place now. Think about it, right? In 2024, all of us have seen videos of decapitated children in Gaza. The United States government still supports Netanyahu in Israel. How different will that be for the Congo? It will still be the same. When it comes to the Congo, the question is not what the United States will do. The United States, as a state, as a nation, has always been on the wrong side of history when it comes to the Congo.
So that was the response that I got, which allowed me at that time to understand perfectly how to even phrase some of the advocacy that we've been doing, right? Because we really want to push we actually want to frame a narrative that is, one, grounded in truth, obviously, but also that will allow the United States government officials to understand why is it in the interest for them, for example, to stop a war in the Congo, and beyond even stopping the war, is just to make sure that international law is being respected, right? So very shocking. And we have been organizing for years. I've been friends with the Congo for 2 years only. But there are people who were there before me, not just within the organization, but also in any other aspect of activism when it comes to the Congo. And lobbying isn't working. Speaking directly to the governments or government officials wasn't working. Marching wasn't working. So we decided we're gonna do a different approach, right? That we are going to bring that to the American people, so that the American people can see, while you struggling with, living from paycheck to paycheck, when you're struggling with the cost of foods, of electricity, when you're struggling economically and you still have to pay taxes, this is where your money is going. This is what is being done by the government with your tax money. This is what's being done overseas with your money. To even particular, I'm going to do a whole show soon regarding that particular organization based in the US that was funneling the money, getting all the money as a nonprofit, all the advantage of being a nonprofit in the US, take the money in and send that to fund and armed groups, plural with S, in the Congo. The money will leave the US and will go to the Congo. I will talk about them. So we decided to do more work out there. And there is a lot that needs to be said regarding the support that we have received from you all watching this. Like I was mentioning in the beginning, amplifying your voice, using your social media platform, reach out to media outlets that allow Congolese like myself to have our story out there. And one story that came up this morning was from the magazine, the Nation magazine, right? And it's for America's Congolese diaspora, peace deals offer a little comfort. The conflict in the Congo is one of the deadliest crises in the world, but many worry that Trump's interest in the region emphasized deals for US investors of lasting peace. There is a lot of stories in there that are very compelling, very, very moving, of my fellow Congolese, Attorney Niels Kinwani. One of them, he's also leading Action for Congo. And he shared his own story. And he said that he was sitting in his elementary school classroom in Bukavu, a city in the eastern region of the Democratic Republic of Congo, when the rebel commander-chiefs entered the room. They picked a number of boys, but they never picked me, Kinwani said, recounting the moments he saw his friends being kidnapped by rebel soldiers in 1997. Following the outbreak violence in the Congo, 1997, that's when the AFDL, supported and backed by Rwanda, invaded the Congo, and they obviously put a Congolese face there, just Laurent Désiré Kabila, and he ended up overthrowing Mobutu, who was in power for 32 years, who had been in power for 32 years. And very interesting. And he said, following the outbreak of violence in the Congo, those boys that were picked and taken from the classroom, their families never saw them. They were recruited into the army and they never went back home. So that this story was shared, and when that story was shared this morning, and shout out to Hannah Epstein for allowing our voice to be out there, and share this other side of the peace deal, of the war, because the war is causing victims, is destroying families, is bringing this mass influx of people, refugees, and people complain, oh my God, a lot of people here, immigrants, blah, blah. Well, you allow your governments to make their country a shithole, if I have to use a term that President Trump used, right? Like, you bomb those countries, they allow the allies to bomb those countries, to invade, kill, rape. Where else do you think they're gonna go? They're gonna go where it's been advertised that it is, the land of the free, home of the brave. They're gonna go to a place where they know free speech is respected. They're gonna go to places where they know they will never have to worry about somebody enter in the room and pick them, right? And pick them to join forcibly the army. Like, y'all don't understand that you are a kid in primary school, in secondary school, and you are told that you are today a brave member of the M23, supported, financed, brought to you by the government of Rwanda. Like, you don't understand how traumatizing that could be, right? And I personally know Niels because it is that experience that made him to become an attorney. And I guarantee you that when you have those type of events, you really want to side with the weak. You really want to side with the victim. And he's an attorney today because of experience that happened to him. So that came out today. That came out today. But there was also this thing. I will show that really quick because it's also in English. I mean, in French, Swahili, whatever language you're speaking in there. But the M23 that tried to rebrand itself into AFC, but we caught the lies, and we wanted to make sure that we know it's the same structure, financed by the same people. They showed last week or early this week that they have recruited, according to them, 7,000 recruits, like new recruits. Please take a look.
Bana kin bana Congo bomoni toza na Romangabo lelo toyaki mpo na collation ya ba mapinga na biso tolibere lelo plus de 7400 commando nde yango tobengi 4 brigades ezali ba FRDC oyo bayaki korejoindre biso bakuta biso a partir ya Goma. Lelo toye basisi formation na bango 7 mois après. Félicitations. Eza mpona koyebisa bino ke tolali te. Libération ya mboka ezali total. Totelemi te. Bopesa biso temps. Tozolamba bokolia biloko ya malamu. Nyonso oyo ezali mabe, corruption, tribalisme, oyo Tshisekedi amema tokomaîtriser yango.
Well, he's essentially saying, he was essentially saying that they were training in the camp and they are coming, that all the things that people were talking about, complaining about corruption, they are going to put an end to that. They were coming to liberate the country. But it's very telling, right? That the narrative that they're putting out there that, we have more than 7,000 people ready for the war. And that's a couple months after the so-called peace deal signed between the Congo and Rwanda, right? And besides that, that's also after there were multiple reports regarding, children being enrolled into the M23. And I want you to remember that like recently, Rwanda was included into what's called the Child Soldier Prevention Act. I think they were included in 2003, 2004, I believe. That why was Rwanda included? Why did the US government include Rwanda? Because the US government has sufficient evidence of Rwandan-backed militia enrolling children. It's very important to know those type of things. And the UN also talks about how civilians, not just children, were forcibly enrolled into the army. So sometimes you don't have a choice. You're a former combatant, they're going to take you, you're going to join the new army, right? But how is this act conducive to peace? How do you explain that few weeks after the peace deal was signed, that the United Nations talked about 300 people that were killed by M23, right? 300 people killed by M23. I'm trying to look at $319 people, including children, including women, killed by Rwanda-backed M23. Few weeks after they signed this accord. I don't understand how that is deemed to be okay. How they let the US is allowing Rwanda to commit this. And what I've noticed is that sometimes you play both ways, both sides, right? And I know that the Congolese government is no stranger into the war crime happening in the Congo, that they're also involved, which is really interesting. And that's why I was saying earlier that that's an incompetent government, because we had a member of the army saying that the Congolese government was allied with the Wazalendo, which is a groups of Congolese that decided to take weapons, but that group had also committed atrocities in the Congo. That's one thing to keep in mind. And before that, we also had the president of the Congo saying that these people were not criminals. It's essentially supporting what was happening and what the Wazalendo were doing, and saying that, hey, we are sanctioning that. That to me is ridiculous. Let me see if I can find. Because as a responsible government, you cannot allow such things. Like, essentially, if you're saying that you are invaded, you cannot allow yourself to be committing the same crime. So if we're going to use international law and say that Rwanda is invading the Congo, Rwanda is supporting militia groups, I think it makes sense that we don't ourselves invade other country. And the Congo hasn't done that, obviously. I don't even think that the Congo's government has a mean to even invade Rwanda. But we also shouldn't back militia groups, no matter the reason. What we should back is a Republican. We should back an army that is working on behalf of the government of the Congo. That is the government that represents the country, not some sort of bunch of people that decide to take weapons just because they want to defend the country. Because if there is no hierarchy, if there is no structure, if we don't try to prioritize the use of a military force that is accountable to someone, that is following the law, the constitution of the nation, we cannot allow a small group of people that have no hierarchy, that have no respect into following the law, because they're going to abuse their power. And that's exactly what has been done. And the Human Rights Watch condemned the Congolese government for doing that. But what I don't understand in the case of Rwanda is that all the tools that the US has, that it has not enforced peace. It's actually funny because earlier I was reading to you guys regarding the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo Release Security and Democracy Promotion Act of 2006. I believe there is another section that talks about the Congo itself. Let me see if I can find it. I don't remember this section specifically, but it's essentially also putting responsibility on the Congolese government, saying essentially the same, that it is the US. Oh, I think I found it. Okay. Section 202 state that the US states, Section 202 state that the president should use influence to support increased international humanitarian and development assistance for the DRC. States, so article section 202 states that if the secretary determines that the government of the DRC is not making sufficient progress toward accomplishing the policy objective, the president shall consider withdrawing US support for such international assistance when future funding decisions are considered. If we have to talk about justice, I think that justice should apply to both sides. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying here that we should only go after the US should only go after Rwanda. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we need to be consistent with the law that we have. And if the law says sanction someone or a country that is destabilizing the Congo, you should sanction that country. You should impose armed embargo. You should put them on the list and prevent them from constantly destabilizing the Congo, for constantly killing civilians, for constantly creating humanitarian crisis that makes a huge migration of people from the Congo to the rest of the world. I'm also saying that we need to be consistent with our own law, because as a fellow Congolese, someone born and raised in the Congo, who has the Congo in his heart, I also believe that the Congolese government is as responsible to what's happening. They are killing civilians in their own way. that still doesn't justify other groups to think that now they have to go above international law, invade other countries, form or funds militia groups to destabilize another country. But still, right? Law should apply on both sides. And for law not being applied for the case of Rwanda particularly, and I'm showing receipt of how or why that has been the case. And from the international perspective, the Key West said sanction Rwanda, yes, but they can't cause they are aiding Israel and in the slaughter of Palestinians. Absolutely. Absolutely. And there was another thing, because Rwanda has been doing what he's doing. And it's funny because I had a conversation and we had a conversation internally, and I always wanted to know how come some influencer, singers, or other organizations, when they want to do a summit, because right now we're talking about the fact that the UCI World Championships, like the cycling, is going to take place in Kigali, Rwanda. So I asked the question, like, don't we have this? Don't we all have access to the internet? And we all have access to the same type of information? How can you explain that it's okay for some companies to decide that that's where they want to have their events, whether it is the NBA doing tournaments over there, signing contracts, whether it is the UCI doing its tournament over there, whether it is John Legend throwing a concert in the Congo, whether it is Kendrick Lamar doing a concert in the Congo. What makes them think that they can do that? And that question was actually asked by Amnesty International to the NBA, I believe, when they were trying to figure out or ask the NBA to stop whatever partnership they have with Rwanda. And I believe it was, and if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but I believe it was the NBA that responded, or maybe that was a conversation that took place internally. Can't really put that on the timeline correctly. That the people at the NBA said that the US State Department told them it was okay for them to do that, which makes sense. The NBA is a big corporation, and someone like Kendrick Lamar, for example, because when you want to travel as a US citizen, they give you like a level of a travel advisory. I think that's the term. And it tells you, according to where you want to go, let me just put that instead. According to where you want to go in the world, it tells you what level each country is, right? So you can see DRC right now is level 3, which is reconsider travel. And they ask this question before traveling to that country. Let me see if they have something for Rwanda. Rwanda is like level 2 as of right now. Exercise, increase caution with higher security risk area. So the NBA, just to name the NBA, said that the US State Department told them that it was okay. And the US State Department thinks it's okay because obviously Rwanda is their ally. And beyond them saying that, it's because Rwanda has been for years hiring PR firms. And the roles of those PR firms is making sure that the American public does not see the crimes that Rwanda is committing. And one of Rwanda's PR firms is PG Lang, owned by Kendrick Lamar. And they are the one who partners with Global Citizen to do African tour or events or concert in Rwanda as part of what they call Move Africa, right? So it is crafted. The media makes sure that there are things that happens in the Congo, in Rwanda, that you don't see because they have interest of you not knowing what's going on. So that's why when there was this beef between Kendrick Lamar and Drake's, which was really interesting for those who know about raps and hip hop, and from all the guns and all the tools each other had against, like to actually, diss other people. I thought that Drake did not use this part of Kendrick Lamar somehow being okay. Or maybe he doesn't know. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't know. Maybe all he cares is just the fact that he's making money, and so he let them do their thing. He's not aware. But I'm just saying that during that beef between Drake's and Kendrick Lamar, because there was a letter of Drake's, actually, a letter signed by Drake's in the days after October 7th. He signed or co-signed along with many other artists. He signed an open letter in October 2023, organized by Artists for Ceasefire, that called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and the safe release of hostages. And he said in the letter that all life is sacred and condemned the killing of both Palestinian and Israeli government civilians, emphasizing the critical needs for humanitarian aid to reach Gaza. We are in October 2023. That was Drake. And I was like, Drake had the opportunity to diss Kendrick Lamar regarding his involvement in Congo, regarding his involvement in Rwanda. And he didn't, which was funny because Kendrick Lamar performed in Kigali in Rwanda on December 6, 2023, the same year. I'm not sure if there was a picture of him and Paul Kagame. I won't be surprised if there is, but I guarantee you that Paul Kagame, because he always used that opportunity to say that, hey, Rwanda is safe. To say that, hey, look at all these people coming to Rwanda. Hey, Rwanda is a country that works. So because Rwanda is a country that works, the QS says, who is that guy? Who's Kendrick Lamar? Because Rwanda is the country that works, that is working. So the problem is not Rwanda when it comes to the Congo. The problem is the Congolese themselves. That's what they're trying to tell you. That's why they're trying to tell the media that you guys have it wrong. Because they make sure that they are showing you their good side. Oh, I think, did I find that? They want to show you that they are not doing anything wrong. So very interesting how, I would say, PR firms works, right? No. The question is the guy in the picture with Kendricks. I'm not sure what picture you're referring to. Because right now I'm showing the how do you call it? The letter, the open letter that was signed by Drake in 2023, October 2023, calling for the end of the war in Gaza and the release of all Israeli hostages. And I was arguing that him siding with human rights at that time versus Kendrick Lamar during the same year visiting Rwanda was supposed to be used in their beef, but that was not used. So to me, that was really interesting. Weird that he didn't use that part. But Kendrick Lamar, and I'm trying to look. Maybe they never did, because I'm on the page of. Maybe it was Paul Kagame himself that posted it. Hopefully he didn't block me. Let's see. I won't be surprised if he did. He probably posted a picture of him and Kendrick's. Nope, he didn't. But Paul Kagame was at the concert, the Kendrick Lamar concert, I can tell you that. And he took the mic and spoke briefly because it's really an opportunity for him to cleanse his image. And it's an opportunity for him to show that the country is working. And I remember during a conference last year, was that last year? Early this year, it was in March in New York. Somebody approached me and said, using the same narrative that Rwanda is putting forward, that how come everything is working in Rwanda, that the economy is good, that people in Rwanda are living better, but how come in news that we get from the Congo is that everything is wrong about the Congo? So don't you think, and that's the question, that the problem is the Congolese government? That was his question. And I tried to gently challenge his belief regarding the information that he had regarding the economic portion of his claim that economically Rwanda was working, that Rwanda's numbers, economic numbers, are good. And I told him that you are not informed of what you know about Rwanda, or the things that you know about Rwanda are intentionally put out there so that you have that frame. of thinking that everything is working in Rwanda. Because in 2019, the Financial Times reported that Rwanda has manipulated its economic data. That was in 2019. In a lengthy investigation using data journalists, the Financial Times said Rwanda has manipulated its poverty statistics. In 2015, France 24 had already reported that Kigali had fiddled with its economic statistics. Let's see what this thing says.
The same conclusion. Their investigation reached the same conclusion as a France 24 report carried out in 2015. At the time, credible sources and a whistleblower had told me that Rwanda was manipulating its statistics to show that there had been a decrease in poverty when in fact there had been an increase. And what the FT did is they asked data journalists to look at 14,000 data points in Rwandan poverty reports. And what these data journalists found is that between 2010 and 2014, in fact, prices had risen for Rwandan families, and therefore poverty could not have gone down. Also, the FT said that there had been a consistent attempt since 2015 to misrepresent results. In 2015, that's the year of the referendum to change the constitution. Kigali does not want to see a rise in poverty in the official statistics. In the end, the referendum was approved. That means that Kagame was able to run in 2017, and that he can now, in theory, run in 2024, 2029, and be in power until 2034.
Has there been any response from Rwanda on these findings from the Financial Times?
Yes, Rwanda denies the allegations. The World Bank
of course
officially denies the allegations, but what's interesting is that the FT on Tuesday published for the first time ever a letter which was written in 2015 by 5 employees from the World Bank, an internal letter that was sent to the directors of the World Bank. And this is what the letter says, according to the FT. Recent developments point to potentially serious reputational risks for the bank if its Rwanda operations continue in the current trajectory. And the authors voiced their concern over what they called the manipulation of official statistics and failure to provide reliable data openly. So this is bad news, this investigation from a prestigious newspaper for Kagame, because, you know, he's often accused of human rights violations, but that doesn't seem to bother him too much. He's always boasting about the economic development of his country. But if, in fact, this development is based on false statistics, well, that will really tarnish his legacy.
Thanks very much.
All right. That's what we know. That's what we know regarding that economic part. There was a question. Does Kendrick Lamar, PG Lang has ties with Rwanda? Absolutely, and that's what I'm talking about. And they partner with Move Africa to organize a series of concerts and even like other touring to bring to Rwandan citizen artists. And that's why even John Legend was there. And then he was saying there was a pressure for him to stand by human rights and cancel his concert. John Legend was like, "No, I'm gonna follow the money." But I'm actually exaggerating. He gave a response that to me translated to that, which is really funny. And maybe that's actually good, segment. But it's very interesting because the same John Legend before was boycotting states, U.S. states, that was not supporting abortion. So it's really funny. Let me put. Is there a video of him? I'm not sure if there's an actual video of John Legend. Oh yeah, I found the video. See, that's why social media is very, very interesting, because everything that you said online will remain. So let's listen to what John Legend said that was 6 years ago regarding abortion and the fact that he will gladly boycott his fellow citizen because their state is not allowing abortion, not just allowing, but punishing people who are doing abortion. Let's listen.
The boycott, Hollywood studios,
Yeah.
maybe pulling out of Georgia. How about the power of the boycott, Hollywood studios
Yeah.
maybe pulling out of Georgia, for instance?
Yeah, I think it could work. I don't know if it definitely will work, but I know that money talks, and I think it's a conversation that needs to be had, particularly when these studios are hiring people and bringing people to the state and saying, come work with us here in this state. But if you get pregnant there, you're going to be treated like a second-class citizen. That's a tough conversation to have with your staff. And so I think hopefully the pressure that the studios are putting on will help Georgia and other states see the error in their ways. But the bottom line is we need to respect women and let women make their own decisions. Well, I think we have to be clear, first of all, about the principles around this. We love our kids. We love the fact that we're parents, but we also love the fact that we could choose when to embark on this major life change, which having a kid is. And the idea that the state would get involved in making that decision for a woman is just unconscionable to me. And there's no way we can have equality in any other realm if women don't have the ability to make these kinds of decisions on their own without the state getting involved. And so as much as we can speak out, as much as we can help out, I think Hollywood can do that, but I think it's not just a Hollywood thing. It's got to be a grassroots thing where people let their politicians know what they think about these laws and what they think about
Okay, so that's what he said 6 years ago, right? Now I'm gonna pull a clip of the same person, right? He doesn't have a twin, as far as I know, speaking regarding our call to boycott his own concert in Rwanda. So let's listen to what he has to say.
I'm aware of what's happening, and I'm aware of the calls there have been for me to not do this show, but I really believe that the mission of Move Africa is still important.
John Legend took the stage in Kigali as part of the 2025 Move Africa concert, but his decision to perform sparked debate, with some calling for him to cancel due to Rwanda's role in the ongoing conflict in DRC.
It's still important to bring international touring to Rwanda and to other places around the continent. And I didn't want to abandon that mission because I may not agree with everything that the leader of the country does. I don't agree with everything the leader of my country does. I don't believe that we should punish the people of Rwanda and punish the people of other countries.
So he doesn't think that we should punish the people of Rwanda, and I agree with him. I agree with him on that premise. Do not punish people of that country because it's illegal. You do that. Rwandan citizen has nothing to do with what the policy that the president is implementing. I agree with that. But we saw that he was okay punishing the people of the few states where the governors were going after those who were having abortion. He was completely okay with that. He actually said money talks, right? Ooh, that's great. Somebody said, because Brianna Chambers said, because he was popular to stand for abortion, but standing for Congo is not popular. It's really sad. Yes. Yep. That's exactly that. Because it's convenient when there was a popular belief that people seem to be joining it. Like it's like when the war in Gaza started, like who had the courage to say ceasefire? Those who did that, we saw what happened to them, right? But now that we have Human Rights Watch, you have Amnesty International, you have even Israeli nonprofits based in Israel. You have the United Nations Human Rights Council saying that it is a genocide. Suddenly you see nations like France saying that they might recognize Palestine. There are other countries, because it's now becoming a popular belief. It's not popular, this idea that, oh, this is wrong. Now people are collectively saying that this is wrong. Therefore, you need to jump in that wagon and say that, yes, it's wrong. In the US, at that time, right? I'm not sure about right now, but at that time, because of who was president, I believe, and because of the idea that are being promoted on social media, on mainstream media, that it's popular to say that, you know what, people have the rights to have abortion. And because everyone thinks like that, I cannot, it's not about the conscience, it's about my pockets. I cannot go against what's popular because I am going to lose money. But what I can do, right? What I can do is go against the minority belief or idea that the war in Congo is not okay. Or that the war in Congo, like that person who came up to me, genuinely asking about what was going on and the information that he had regarding Rwanda, that perhaps that the issue was not so much about Paul Kagame, but about the Congolese government. And that's why I said that I agree with him, with John Legend, regarding what he said. Let me see. Right here. He said money talks. Because it really is not about his conscience. It's not about morality here. It's about money and the power of having him to go against the majority. He did not want to go against the majority in his own states. That's why he supported the abortion, the boycotts of Hollywood and other singers. That for him, it was okay that his own citizens were punished because of what the leaders were thinking regarding abortion. That to me is crazy. But when it comes to Rwanda, that premise no longer holds. Why? Because what that person says, it's not a popular idea that Rwanda is committing war crimes in the Congo. That Rwanda is committing crimes against humanity in the Congo. Why? Because you have PR firms like Kendrick Lamar, PG Lang, putting out there all the things that they want to put to cleanse Rwandan image. Why? Because you have organizations that are hosting tournaments in Rwanda. It's unbelievable. The number of international organizations being hosted in Rwanda. And how do you want to hold those people accountable? How do you want to hold Rwanda presidents, a government, accountable if you give the idea that there is absolutely nothing wrong with the government of Rwanda, of Paul Kagame? Because the US State Department says that it's okay to go to Rwanda. Because the US State Department told the NBA that it's okay for them to do partnership with Rwanda. And that's why Amnesty International has been calling for the NBA to review its partnership with Rwanda. And that's why the United States government is allowing organizations in the US to essentially fund war in the Congo. A really interesting article. And you can hit me up privately or Friends of the Congo if you want to have access to this document from Texas to South Kivu Highlands, Maoho Peace Association's complex channels finance militia. Washington and Kinshasa believe a vast network operating under the cover of an American association is financing the Banyamulenge community militia. According to the FBI and Congress intelligence evidence, hundreds of thousands of dollars may have been used to finance the war efforts in South Kivu. And actually, because I don't want to get in trouble for copyrights, I can still provide you guys with the UN report regarding this exact story, because the United Nations published a report a couple years ago. Let's see if I can pull this up. I have all the receipts. And let me see. Maybe it's better if I download this. It's the report is called S 2003. S 2003 slash 437. And there is a whole section regarding that specific organization based in the US, a nonprofit organization based in the US that is, or that was, or that has been funding war groups, like militia groups in the Congo. And it says here, Twirwaneho will continue to finance itself through a local taxation scheme and funding from the Banyamulenge diaspora living in the region in the United States of America. Some humanitarian relief funds sent by Maoho Peace, a Banyamulenge community association based in the US, were used to finance Twirwaneho. And by the way, Twirwaneho was accused by the same UN to have killed UN soldiers. So that's a war crimes under international law. So it says that this group has been sending money to those militia groups, and not just Twirwaneho, but also M23. You know what? We're gonna dive into this on a different episode. I will say this way, but to me, that's the reasons why everything that is happening in the Congo seems to be brushed under the rug. That's so messed up. I didn't know the NBA is getting involved. What? I'm going to reach out and we'll be reaching out about Congo as soon as possible. Yes, please. And because I am out of time, I'm going to really quick share some information, particularly the news that I mentioned at the beginning. A few things that I think are worth mentioning regarding the Congo. Share with you guys. It's this one. First, Glencore, September 19th, so today. Miner and trader Glencore has been in talks about selling and controlling stake in a unit that operates a major copper and cobalt project in the DRC. The news comes a month after Glencore, the world's second largest coal miner, said a significant portion of its production of the metal was likely to remain unsold by the end of the year due to DRC's suspension of cobalt exports. So the DRC, after the Congo, maybe let's just keep reading this. Glencore has informally expressed willingness to sell its stake in Kamoto Copper with potential buying, including investment firm Orion Resource Partner and miner Rio Tinto. The report says, citing people familiar with the matter, the U.S. International Development Finance Corp could also be involved in KCC deal through partnership with New York-based Orion Resource Partner, Bloomberg said. So something really quick to say about this is the comments, right? So first is that when the war started in the Congo, actually, let me backtrack. So a few years ago, talking about Glencore was accused and convicted of corruption, including bribery and market manipulation in the US, in the UK, in Brazil. They had to pay a lot, hundreds of millions of dollars in fines and penalties in 2022. So that's probably when you're gonna hear Dan Gertler, who is an Israeli billionaire that was involved into that. He was actually named, I would say. So the company admitted to paying bribes to secure business advantages, particularly through its oil and mining operation in countries like the DRC, Nigeria, Venezuela. Following these admissions, Glencore pleaded guilty to foreign bribery and market manipulation, leading to over 1.1 billion. I was actually wrong. I said millions. It's 1.1 billion in payments to the US government and 280 million euros. I think maybe that's pounds. I think it's pounds. Pounds penalty in the UK. So that's about Glencore in a nutshell, right? And they obviously mining resources like cobalt. And so when the war started by Rwanda's backed militia M23, who for years were funded by organizations like Mahoro Peace before the Rwanda takeover, and fully fund and even provides boots on the ground, right? M23 captured a really popular mining site called Rubaya. So Rubaya is really famous because that's one of the largest deposits of coltan, colonial tantalum. That's the minerals that is being used right now to make your cell phones. And unlike what Prime Minister Nintendo said, your cell phone is a piece of the Congo. Rubaya, the mine of Rubaya, another thing for you to know, the mine of Rubaya used to be owned by a company who was owned by a former leader of the CNDP. The CNDP, bear with me, was another iteration of the M23. So it was another Rwandan-backed militia. So after the accord was signed in 2009 between the CNDP and the Congolese government on March 23rd, 2009, that's why the M23 got the names, because they considered that the Congolese government never respected the content of the accord. But there was a fragment, there was a part of the people from the CNDP who ended up being okay with the accord and joined the Congolese government. And one of the current political presidents, I will say with the CNDP, who is not a political party, was this guy named Mwanga Shushu. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. And he later was supposedly elected member of parliament. So his company, for years, had control over the Rubaya mine. So when Tshisekedi came to power, the same Tshisekedi who was seen he took photos with the members of Mahoro Peace Association who were backed or financing the M23. The same Tshisekedi decided that he did not want to let this person who was the political president of the CNDP, who morphed into, whose one fraction morphed into a political group when the other decided to change and transform and become M23. But he decided that he wanted to take away his right. I'm not sure, because I know that there was that contract, right? That deal with the Congolese government at the time. Not sure how that deal was made, if it's illegal, if it's not. But I know that that guy who was a former member of parliament who was currently in jail by Tshisekedi's regime, was the owner of those mines, the mine of Rubaya. So when Tshisekedi came to power, he decided he wanted to confiscate his right. He arrested him on the basis that he was in contact with M23 members, that he had connection, which makes sense. Like I explained, like they were all friends, right? They're all doing really in that friendship relationship. And he decided he was going to join the government. And he took over, Tshisekedi took over the mine and gave it to his brother, Christian Tshisekedi. So when the M23 revamped, when they came back in 2021, they decided that the first thing that they were going to do after Bunagana fell was to take over towns that hosted where they find like those mineral sites or deposits. So Rubaya was one of them, and that was one of the news that broke out last year, a couple years ago, last year actually. So Glencore obviously was operating in those countries, but when the Congolese government signed an accord, and that was also in our special Genocast episode, when the Congolese government signed an accord with Rwanda, supposedly the peace accord, there was a lot in there that we knew were going to be red flags. And we talk about that during, I talk about this during an interview with Frederic Mousseau from Auckland Institute, because he dissects for us the company that he thinks, after the research that they did, after the comprehensive research they did, the report that they published, that the companies, the US companies that were going to benefit from that, from the accord. The first one, then that's a report by Auckland Institute, and we talked about this on August 2nd, so go back and you can see the video. But you can also find that online. So you can also go and actually read the reports. Who will profit from Trump's DRC Rwanda peace deal? A closer look at the billionaires and corporation poised to cash in the agreement. So a few of them. And I really want y'all to pay attention to the names before I go back to the reports. There is BlackRock, there is Vanguard, there is, what's this? America First, my eyes, Global. There is Rio Tinto. There is Ivanhoe Mine. There is Orion. There is Tesla. There is Alphaman, Glencore, Cobalt Metals. These are the companies, according to Auckland Institute, that they believe will profit from the beef deal. Now we go back. Now, let me go back to the report from Reuters that talks about I'm not sure what happened. It's weird. Okay. My apologies. I'm not sure what happened. So I'm going to go back to the report on Reuters. Okay. So this report will also tell a similar story about the fact that they have been talked to selling controlling stake, and then they name a few companies. Glencore is informally expressed willingness to sell its stake in Kamoto Copper with potential buyers, including investment firm Orion Resource Partners and Rio Tinto. Just like we were told by Auckland Institute. So I think it's very important for us to follow that news, because also another thing about Ivanhoe, not sure if I'm even pronouncing that name right, but they were involved in war crime in the Congo, in the sense that, let me see. Let me get that. The same Ivanhoe was involved into, because what happened is that under Tshisekedi, still, they signed a partnership with Ivanhoe because they thought that was going to be a good deal. Like, they want them to come in. It's a Canadian firm, I believe. So they wanted them to come and being able to do the mine and stuff. So hold on, let me just find that Ivanhoe. Yes. So okay. So that was in 2017. What happened in 2017 was that, put on top of my, so in 2017, there was 45 households that were forcibly removed for Ivanhoe's mine Kakula projects. 45 households, that's about 270 people. And there was actually a report by Human Rights who accused them of abuse linking to eviction. Let me see if I can pull that out for y'all to see. So, okay, that was September 2023. Just share this really quick. There you go. Canadian mining firm accused of human rights abuse linked to the eviction in the DRC. The Canadian company Ivanhoe, that was September 12, 2023, compromised the human rights of hundreds of people in the DRC who were evicted to make way for the expansion of a sprawling copper mining complex in the country south, a new report has found. So that's what happened. And President Tshisekedi welcomed the same company subsidiary in the same deal that happened in Kipushi to allow them to continue to mine Congolese resources without ever facing accountability. And it's the same Ivanhoe that we learned in Reuters is going to be buying some shares to buying the shares from Glencore, right? And very interesting, because when you read even the press release by Ivanhoe Mines announces the DRC President, His Excellency Félix Tshisekedi officially reopens the Kipushi zinc copper lead germanium mine, and that was November 21st, 2024, like a little bit less than a year. So this is what the Congo or the Congolese people have to deal with. And this is the news that we see on TV, that we read on certain media, and you might think that is, oh yeah, it's just not a news of Glencore, of mining happening. But if you actually dig deep enough to know the name of the people involved, of the companies involved, and you're able to read multiple reports that had been out there about the Congo, you will see that everything is connected regarding the Congo. That everything is connected. That it's not random that Glencore decides right now to sell its share, because it's part of this deal that was signed. Because Glencore is mainly based in Switzerland, versus these companies that I named are in America or have American stakeholder. And that's why when we present those facts, when we presented the peace accord, the way it was presented to us, we said that we don't have all the informations. And we need to know more about that. We need to pressure the American government more about that. Canadians need to pressure the Canadian government more about what's going on. Just like Europeans need to pressure the governments more about what's going on in the Congo, because their governments are involved. They know things that we don't know. And when Congolese senator came to America in a letter and essentially was asking back in February help from the Congolese government, he was clear. He said, minerals in exchange for peace. You guarantee peace to our people, we're going to give you minerals. And then President Trump on Fox News for 15 minutes talked about that again. But then you read the contents of this particular agreement, you realize that they are going to get the minerals, but we're never going to get the peace part of it. They are going to come and take the minerals they call critical minerals without leaving the Congolese people with something that we call peace. We just want to be able to live in peace. We just want to be able to live in a world where you are not going to be witnessing your kids being killed, your wife being raped, your sisters being raped, your brother or yourself being enrolled into joining the militia group. We want to live in a world where international justice actually means something. Not just for the weak, but even for the powerful. That those who say that they are going to protect or uphold international law actually uphold international law, even when it goes against their interest. That the United States finally take his global leadership, because the headquarters of the UN is in the US. that we understand as a collective the role of the US internationally, the role of powerful allies into protecting countries like Rwanda, despite documented atrocities. And it's important for us to know that. It's important for us to be able to name the different laws that the US has, or that the US created to uphold international law overseas, to allow Congo to live in peace, to allow Congolese people to be free, I will say. And we need people to be aware of this law. Public Law 109, 456, the Child Soldier Prevention Act, that refuse or put on the list countries that are somehow recruiting child soldiers, that the US cannot be funding such countries. The legal law that prevents the United States to provide funding or weapons to countries that are clearly, undeniably committing war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, violating basic human rights. So when you are aware of those things, then you know how you can frame the conversation when you go and lobby, when you go and talk to your representative, and ask them to not use your taxpayer money so that a war is being funded overseas. You challenge them on the fact that there are people in the US, organizations in the US, from foreign countries, from Rwanda, that are somehow destabilizing the Congo, and the RICO charge is not being brought on them, that US laws is not touching them. But as soon as you run a red light, you're going to get your tickets. As soon as you, as an individual citizen, you commit to one of the pettiest or smallest crime or contravention, whatever, then that's a big deal. That we're going to vilify those who cross the borders and risk their lives because they just want a better life. But we're not going to criminalize or persecute those who are actually funding terrorism overseas. We're not going to prosecute people who are funding groups that rape women, rape even children. So from the draft agreements that may entrench, not even may, that entrenches exploitation to mining giants, literally reshuffling assets, redistributing card. Like, you know what? It was Glencore, but today's Glencore. Tomorrow is going to be Orion Resources. It's going to be Tesla. It's going to be other companies. It's going to be Ivanhoe. From that perspective to even sanctions that may or may not even bite, because the US did sanction few companies a month ago. I think that's also really good news to put as we are concluding this. Let me see. U.S. announces sanctions against armed group and companies profiting from conflict minerals in the Congo. That was August 12, 2025. This senior U.S. government official spoke on condition of anonymity ahead of the formal announcement, said that the State and Treasury Department are sanctioning the Parico armed group, which controlled the key coltan mine site of Rubaya from 2022 to early 2024. The U.S. is also sanctioning Congo's mining company, CDMC, saying it sells minerals which were sourced and smuggled from mine near Rubaya and to Hong Kong exporters, East Rise Star Dragon, that purchased minerals from the mining area in Hong Kong. If you don't want to say China. So it will be very interesting to bring back Mr. Frederic Mousseau from the Oakland Institute, because he shared with me personally that they are working on another report that will even build on what they already have. I mean, it's the same report that will build on what they already have regarding the sanctions, regarding the peace deals, and how the peace deals is biased to one side, and how the peace deal is obviously profiting. But we're gonna go get more details on how the United States, and that's his own words, somehow benefit from the smuggled mineral resources. We will talk about that. With him. Hopefully, I'm gonna bring him back. So the people of the Congo notice, we see those sanctions that are literally drops in water, drops in the ocean. So despite the Congo, the people of Congo continue to be caught literally into perpetual cycle of violence, where their own lives are secondary, I would say, to the global demand for resources. It's more important for people to have access to the cobalt, those companies to have access to the cobalt, so that we can get cell phones, we can get laptops, and we can get military equipment. When we talk about the army, we can get airplanes, than actually the lives of human beings. So we're gonna get the conversation going. We're gonna continue to pressure those we have elected, senators, member of the House of Representatives if you're in the US, deputy if you're in Europe and other countries, MPs, so that we're going to continue to challenge the narrative that is out there, a narrative that seems to paint Rwanda as this saint country, as Paul Kagame as being the leader of a country that came outside of the aftermath of genocide and was able to transform a whole country into a country that works, erasing the history of violence that he has imposed on his own people, when he's massacring his people, when he's jailing the citizens that are voicing their opinion that differs to his. Going into Congo and tracking down Hutus and hunting Hutus, if I have to use the term that Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctor Without Borders, used in the report, the hunting of Hutus in the Congo. You're gonna forget about that fact when you talk about Paul Kagame, because they want you to not talk about that. So you're gonna challenge your member of parliament, your elected officials regarding that. You're gonna tell them to not use your tax dollars money to fund a war overseas. You're going to tell them to make sure that crimes are not rewarded in the United States. And you're going to continue to support Congolese voice and amplify our voice. Speaking on our behalf if you can, if you are able to, if you're privileged enough to do that, use your platform to do it. Or share our contents. Follow us on YouTube, on Instagram, on X, and amplify the voice of the Congolese, because silence only benefit those who profit from war. So thanks again for watching this. Stay connected, stay truth, and thank you for joining Congo Unfiltered. I will see you next week, where we're going to continue to expose the truth. We're going to continue to speak about what other people won't speak about. We're going to continue to talk about the truth that they try to bury. And hopefully, justice will be on the Congolese side tomorrow. So thank you. I will see you next weekend, next Friday, same time. You can follow us on YouTube. You can watch this again on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on X. I'll see you next week. Thank you.